Today, we're cracking open a case file on a viral killer, one that's literally shaped history, brought economies to their knees, and terrified people for centuries. Yeah, we're talking about yellow fever. Imagine this for a second. You see a ship pulling into the harbor, but it's flying a yellow flag. That single flag, the yellow jack, was a terrifying signal. It meant death and chaos had arrived. This wasn't just any disease. It was so feared that its story is completely tangled up with global exploration, war, you name it. Okay, so if we're going to understand this threat, we've got to start with a profile of our culprit. Who, or maybe what, is this yellow jack? So, at its core, yellow fever is a virus. It's part of the flavivirus family. Think of it as a cousin to West Nile and Zika. And, as you might have guessed, it's carried by mosquitoes. But what about that yellow part of the name? Well, that's pretty literal. It comes from jaundice. You know, when a person's skin and eyes turn yellow. That happens in the really bad cases when the virus just goes to town on the liver. Now, here's what's so wild about how this thing works. If you get infected, there's a good chance, more than half actually, that you won't feel a thing. No symptoms. Another third of people might just feel like they have the flu. But, and this is a big but, for about 12% of people, it takes a turn. A really bad turn. It progresses to a severe, toxic phase. And this is where yellow jack gets its scary reputation. For that unlucky group that gets the severe disease, the mortality rate can shoot up to 50%. 50! It's literally a coin toss for whether you'll survive. Just wow. And the historical footprint of this thing? It's just staggering. I mean, think about it. It delayed the construction of the Panama Canal. It killed more American soldiers in the Spanish-American War than actual fighting did. And for over 100 years, it just hammered major U.S. cities like Philadelphia and New Orleans. But the origin story, that's key. Genetic studies point to Africa. It hitched a ride to the Americas during the horrific slave trade, and once it got here, it found the perfect conditions to just explode. So that brings us to the next big question in our case file. How does this virus get around, right? How does it jump from one person to the next? Or even more mysteriously, from a remote jungle to a packed city? Well, the answer involves a key accomplice. You know, for hundreds of years, this was the central puzzle. The disease would just show up. Out of nowhere, it felt like. It would tear through a city and then vanish. Scientists were stumped. They knew it wasn't spreading like a common cold, person to person. The real culprit, as it turned out, was way, way smaller. Okay, so the virus has this really clever three-part strategy. First, you've got the jungle cycle. Deep in the forest, the virus is just bouncing between monkeys and wild mosquitoes. Pretty contained. But then a human, say a logger or a farmer, goes into that forest, gets bitten, and boom, they become a bridge. If that infected person then travels to a city where you've got those urban-loving mosquitoes like Aedes aegypti, they can kick off a full-blown urban cycle. And that's when you get massive epidemics, with the virus just jumping from human to mosquito to human over and over. For what felt like forever, yellow fever was just this unstoppable force of nature. But then, science started to fight back. A series of absolutely incredible breakthroughs finally started to corner this killer. And once the ball got rolling, it moved surprisingly fast. Think about this timeline. In 1881, a Cuban scientist, Carlos Finlay, first pointed the finger at mosquitoes. 20 years later, a team led by Walter Reed proved he was right. Then, in 1927, they finally isolated the actual virus from a patient in Ghana named Asibi. And just about 10 years after that, bam, the 17D vaccine was licensed. A total game changer. And when I say game changer, I am not kidding. We're talking about a single shot. One dose that gives 99% of people immunity for life. It's honestly one of the most effective vaccines ever made. The magic is that it uses a live but weakened version of the virus. It's just enough to teach your immune system exactly how to fight off the real thing forever. So you'd think that's the end of the story, right? Case closed. We have this miracle vaccine. But not so fast. In our modern, interconnected world, this old enemy is finding new ways to make a comeback. You could say the cold case has been officially reopened. So what's going on? Why the comeback? Well, it's a few things. For one, we're pushing deeper into jungles and forests, bumping right up against those natural virus cycles. Then you have climate change, which might be creating new, cozy homes for the mosquitoes that carry it. And here's a huge one. there are still major gaps in vaccination coverage. All of this is happening while a person and a virus can hop on a plane and be on the other side of the world in less than a day.
And this leads to what is, frankly, a nightmare scenario for public health experts. What happens when a massive outbreak hits, like it did in Angola back in 2016, and you just run out of vaccine? The global stockpile of this amazing vaccine can actually get used up. So what do you do then?
Well, you get creative, you have to innovate, and one of the key strategies is something called fractional dosing. In an emergency, the World Health Organization gives the green light to use just 1/5 of the normal dose, and the science backs it up. Studies show that even this tiny amount can still protect someone for at least time months. And the best part, it means you can vaccinate 5 times more people with the exact same amount of vaccine. It's a brilliant way to stretch a limited supply. And look, there is a global plan in place. The WHO has what they call the EY strategy, which stands for Eliminate Yellow Fever Epidemics. It's a huge, coordinated push to get vaccines to the people who need them most and to be ready to jump on outbreaks before they spin out of control. The big goal here is to get rid of these urban epidemics by 2026. Which really brings us back to the final question on this case file. We have the tools, we definitely have the knowledge, but we're dealing with a virus that has always been brilliant at exploiting the very connections that make our world work. So in our hyper-connected, globalized society, the question isn't if yellow fever will make another move, it's when. And will we be ready for it?